By the completion of this lecture, a student should be able to understand the concepts and meanings of authority and responsibility, to distinguish between them, and to understand the relation between authority, responsibility, and accountability, and to compare between mentioned variables, and to introduce the determinants of authority and responsibilities, merits and demerits of delegation of authority, and the impacts of authority and responsibility on the management process. The concept of authority. Authority is a legal power which is possessed by a person from his superior officers, and with the help of which he succeeds in getting the things done by his subordinates. Authority is the key to managerial functions. If the managers do not possess required authority, they will not be able to perform their duties properly. A manager is in a position to influence his subordinates only by the use of his authority. It is authority which enables him to discharge the important functions of planning, coordination, motivation, and controlling, etc. in an enterprise. If proper authority is not vested in him, he cannot perform these functions in the required manner, and he cannot be held responsible for all these functions in the absence of proper authorities. It is only the authority by virtue of which he dominates his subordinates and gets work done by them. Definition of authority. Henry Foyle stated, authority is the right to give order and the power to exact obedience. Coons and O'Donnell arguments that authority is the power or to command, to act or not to act in a manner deemed by the possessor of the authority to further enterprise and departmental performance. While concluding the meaning of authority, it can be said that authority in ordinary sense of the term is nothing more than a legal right. It empowers an individual to take decisions. He is given a right to command and to exercise control over those who are responsible for the execution of policies and programs of the enterprise. For decision taken, the authorized person is held responsible and is made answerable to his superiors and the organization as a whole. So, authority is right to give order. This is a very concentrated definition. Authority is the right to give order. Determinants of authority or factors for successful use of authority. For successful use of authority, following factors may be taken into account. The following factors may be taken into account to achieve a successful authority. Or you can say determinants of authority. Favorable atmosphere, climate. For the implementation of authority, favorable atmosphere must be created in the enterprise so that sweet human relation may be established in the enterprise. Number 2, justified behavior. The second important use for successful implementation of authority is justified behavior of the officers towards their subordinates. They must feel and treat all the employees on an equal ground. If they do not do so, the employees may not contribute their efforts towards the attainment of objectives of enterprise. Mutual cooperation and faith. There must be a mutual cooperation and mutual trust between officers and employees of the enterprise for the successful use of authority. Interest in the work. A very important condition of the successful use of authority is that the employees must have an interest in the work for which they are responsible. If they are not interested in their work, it may be very difficult for the higher officers to implement their authority. Respect to superior. There must be an atmosphere in the enterprise in which the employees pay their best regards or attention to their bosses. If they do not have a feeling of regard for them, they may not obey their orders. Sources of authority. There are three main sources of authority, or theoretical approach of authority: formal authority theory, acceptance theory, and competence theory. Let's see what stands behind formal authority theory. According to this approach, all authority originates in the formal structure of an organization. The ultimate authority in a joint stock company lies with the shareholders. Shareholders entrust the management of the company to the board of directors and delegate to it most of their authority. The board of directors delegates authority to the chief executive, and chief executive in turn to departmental managers, and so on. Every manager or executive possesses authority because of his organizational position, and this authority is known as formal authority. Authority conferred by law is also regarded as formal authority. Subordinates accept the formal authority of a manager because of his position in the organization. The subordinates are aware of the fact that if they disregard the formal authority, they will be punished according to the rules and regulations of the plant company. The formal authority theory further states that superiors have the right to delegate their authority. Thus, formal authority always follows from top to bottom. Acceptance theory. The statement states that authority is the power that is accepted by others. Formal theory, authority is reduced to nominal authority if it is not accepted by the subordinates. The subordinates accept the authority if the advantages to be derived by its acceptance exceed the disadvantages resulting from its refusal. The subordinates gives obedience to the managers because they visualize the following advantages: safety of financial incentives, contribution in attaining the objectives of the enterprise, fulfillment of responsibilities, appreciation from colleagues, setting of an example for others, responsibility to leadership of superior, moral obligation because of regard for old age, experience, competence, etc. Competence theory. The supporters of this view assert that an individual derives authority because of his personal qualities and technical competence. Many persons derive informal authority because of their competence. For instance, a person possesses expert knowledge in a particular subject. People will go to him for guidance in the matter even though he has got no formal authority. Meaning and source of power. Power is a method of operating in order to influence the behavior of others. It is power politics within the organizations that gives rise to power centers in the organization. The power centers need not necessarily be located at the position of higher authority. Nobody wants to lose power because power can be used in desirable or undesirable ways. Power may be also defined as ability to exert influence. If a person has power, it means that he is able to change the attitude of other individuals. In any organization, for found organizational stability, power and right to do things must be equated. When power and authority for a given person or position are roughly equated, we may be called situation as legitimate power. So, the sources of power is about 5 sources: legitimate power, pure power, corrective power, referent power, expert power. Legitimate power can be defined that the power corresponds to the term authority. It exists when the influencer acknowledges that the influencer is lawfully entitled to exert influence. In this, the influencer has an obligation to accept this power. Reward power. This power is based on the influencer having the ability to reward the influence for carrying out orders. Corrective power. It is based on the influencer's ability to punish the influence for not carrying out orders or for not meeting requirements. Referent power. It is based on the influencer's desire to identify with or imitate the influence. Expert power. This power is based on belief that the influence has some relevant expertise or special knowledge that the influence does not have. In having the study of power, the role of the influence in accepting or rejecting the attempt influence is very important. It must be noted that each of the 5 power bases is potentially inherent in a manager position and his activities. In having the study of power, the role of the influence in accepting or rejecting the attempted influence is very important. It must be noted that each of the 5 power bases is potentially inherent in a manager's position and his activities. Difference between authority and power. The table below shows the difference or compare between authority and power based on 5 elements. 6. Right to command. Authority is the right to command, whereas power is the ability to command. Right to exercise. Authority usually resides in the position in the organization, but power is exercised by the person. Authority includes the right to exercise, which have been institutionalized. Positional and legitimate. Authority is always positional and legitimate and is conferred on the position. But power is not institutional, rather it is personal. It is acquired by people in various ways, and then exercised upon others. It is acquired through political means or by having certain personal attitudes or attributes. Authority increases. It has been observed that authority increases as soon as one goes up in the organizational hierarchy, but it need not necessarily be accompanied by more power. In actual practice, the power centers may be located at the power levels in the organization. Therefore, one cannot have an idea of power centers in an organization by merely looking at its organizational chart. Authority relationship. In practice, authority relationships are modified by power politics in the organizations. Some individuals may have more power and less authority, or more authority and less power. It is operating mechanism of the organization which is relevant for studying organizational behavior. Authority, a downward concept. Authority is a downward following a concept, whereas power follows in all directions. Delegation of authority. Authority can be delegated to the lower levels on the organization. The lower we go down, the lesser is authority. Delegation of authority. Delegation means devolution of authority on subordinates to make them to perform the assigned duties or tasks. It is that part of the process of organization by which managers make it possible for others to share the work of accomplishing organizational objectives. Delegation consists of granting authority or the right to decision making in certain defined areas and changing the subordinate with the responsibility of carrying through the assigned tasks. And delegation refers to the assignment of work to others and confer them the requisite authority to accomplish the job assigned. In the words of F.G. Ma, delegation means assigning work to others and gives them authority to do it. Delegation, according to Lewis, is a dynamic of management. It is the process a manager follows in dividing the work assigned to him so that he performs that part which only he, because of his unique organizational placement, can perform effectively, and so that he can get others to help him with what remains. Delegation is a process of sharing a few or all of the four elements of the management process: command, planning, coordinating, and control. He goes on to say that the delegation is not a question of issuing instruction, but is a bringing down of executive responsibilities and transmission of part of all of it to other person. Since one person constitutes only one manpower, Moore has once said that delegation therefore is necessary for enlarging his capacity by asking trusted subordinates to share his burden. Without delegation, the very existence of organization is shattered at once. If there are no duties to be divided and no authorities to be shared in the organization, the existence of an organization structure is nullified and becomes absurd. Management of that organization becomes impossible without delegation. For this reason, activities are to be integrated, coordinated, and unity of purpose to be achieved. The necessities effective delegation. Methods of delegation. In a big manufacturing concern, the following may be the method of delegation of authority to ensure better results: unified direction and command, and effective delegation. Administrative delegation, geographical delegation, functional delegation, and technical delegation. Administrative delegation. When a few of the administrative functions are delegated to subordinate staff, it is called administrative delegation. These functions are generally of routine nature. For example, to maintain discipline, to supervise the work, to recommend for the reward or punishment. Number 2, geographical delegation. When the work of enterprise is located at different distance, it is not possible for an executive to manage the whole affair single-handed. He then proceeds to delegate his authority to those who are posted at the places where physically he cannot be present round the year. This is known as a geographical method of delegating the authority. Functional delegation. When the enterprise is organized on the basis of functional organization, the delegation of authority is also done on the functional basis. All the heads are given to manage their department according to their skill, knowledge, and experience. Of course, they are accountable to the chief executives. Technical delegation. This method of delegation of authority is based on technical knowledge and skill. Here, the authority is delegated in order to get the knowledge, the advantages of expert and experienced hands and their technical skill. The elements of delegation and its types. The elements of delegation of authority involve 3 steps: authority, responsibility, and accountability. Elements of delegation. The elements of delegation are 3. authority, responsibility, and accountability. Generally speaking, the superior grants authority to the subordinates to carry out the assigned task or duty. This may include rights to use resources, spend money, engage people. This is about authority. Responsibility refers to that the superior entrusts some responsibility or duty to a subordinate. Accountability. The last step in delegation is concerned with creating an obligation to carry out duty or responsibility and render an account of the result achieved through the use of delegated authority. Authority is the sum of the rights entrusted to an individual to make possible the performance of the work delegated. It includes such rights or powers as that spending money or using certain kinds of quantities of material or of hiring and firing people. Alan Lewis talks of authority of knowledge, authority of position, and legal authority. Authority of knowledge, according to him, is possessed generally by the staff specialists appointed by the company. The consultants more often influence the action of persons in line by virtue of the knowledge possessed by them. Similarly, some persons acquire authority by virtue of their position. For instance, a person close to the person having line authority wields considerable authority. Responsibility. According to Elwin Brown, responsibility is capable of being understood in two senses. In one, it denotes the definition of a part or role to be performed in administration. In the other, it denotes the obligation of the performance of that part. Two meanings are reciprocal. In most circumstances, there is so little difference between the concept of the part and the concept of the obligation that it is more useful to view them as inseparably related aspects of the same concept and to refer to them by single term. Taken in this sense, many authors have held that responsibility cannot be delegated, but authority and responsibility are coextensive, and responsibility or duty can be delegated within the framework of authority. In fact, it is the accountability which cannot be delegated. Therefore, it is essential to make a distinction between responsibility and accountability. Accountability. Accountability is the obligation to carry out responsibility and exercise authority in terms of performance standards established by the superior. Creation of accountability is the process of justifying the granting of authority to subordinates for accomplishment of a particular task. In order to make this process effective, the standards of performance should be determined before assigning a task and should be accepted by the subordinates. An important principle of management governing this basic relationship is that of single accountability. An individual should be answerable to only one immediate superior and no more. Accountability cannot be delegated, so it is incurred as a result of assignment of duty and conferring of authority. Accountability in itself cannot be delegated. The delegate cannot abdicate responsibility. He remains accountability to his superior for that which the latter has delegated to him. Since accountability cannot be delegated, the accountability of person in the hierarchy of the acts of subordinates is unconditional. Types of delegation. Generally speaking, there are four twins of type of delegations: general and specific delegation, formal and informal delegation, written and unwritten delegation, downward and upward delegation. General or a specific delegation. General delegation. It is that delegation in which the authority is given to perform general managerial functions like planning, organizing, directing, etc. The subordinate managers perform these functions and enjoy the authority required to carry out these responsibilities. The chief executive exercises overall control and guides the subordinates from time to time. The specific delegation. A specific delegation relates to a particular function or an assigned task. The authority delegated to the production manager for carrying out this function will be a specific delegation. Various departmental managers get specific authority to undertake their department duties. Formal or informal delegation. Formal delegation. Formal delegation has been considered as a part of organizational structure Whenever a task is assigned to a person, the required authority is also given to him. This delegation is a part of the normal functioning of the organization. Every person is automatically given authority as per his duties. When production manager gets powers to increase production, then it is formal delegation of authority. Informal delegation. This delegation does not arise due to position, but it arises according to the circumstances of the case. Written or unwritten delegation. Written delegation is normally given through letters, instructions, circulars, etc. Whatever has been delegated, it must be in writing. Unwritten delegation is given to the person concerned not in any particular way, but through conventions, customs, and usages. The other party has to do work accordingly. Downward and upward delegations. Downward delegation is a common type of delegation and is used in every type of the working concept. This delegation has been considered as a superior's delegation of authority to his immediate subordinates. Upward delegation. This type of delegation takes place when a subordinate assigns some of his tasks to his superiors. This is an uncommon type of delegation, and instances are very rare. Principles of delegation. We can compute 10 principles of delegation. There must be proper planning, select appropriate subordinates of delegation, maintain purity and of authority and responsibility, ensure unity of command, maintain adequate communication, reward effective delegation, establish a climate of confidence, establish a strong belief in delegation, proper selection and training of personnel, proper control techniques must be developed. There must be proper planning. An executive must plan as to what is to be achieved. If delegation of authority is made, he should define clearly the objectives to be achieved and the functions to be performed by delegating the authority. The job should be designed and divided in such a way as to achieve the objectives. The subordinates must understand clearly what activities they must undertake and what delegators expect from him. Select appropriate subordinate of delegation. The subordinate should be selected in the light of the work to be achieved. The qualification of the individual concerned may be influence the nature of the delegation of authority. This is the purpose of the managerial functioning of staffing, most carefully considered. Maintain purity of authority and responsibility. Authority should be delegated commensurate with responsibility. This is on the functions that where the subordinates are held responsible for performance of certain duties. It is fair that they should be vested with the necessary authority to carry out such duties. Although Technically, it would be inaccurate to stress the questions of equality as the executive does without a certain amount of authority. There must be adequate correlation between duty and authority delegated. Ensure unity of command. This is one of the common principles of organization advocated by Henry Fayol, which stresses that subordinates should have only one boss to whom he should be accountable to avoid confusion and friction. Of course, in practice, it is not possible to follow this principle. Maintain adequate communication. There should be free and continuous flow of information between the superior and the subordinate with a view to furnish the subordinate with the relevant information to help him make decisions and also to interpret properly the authority delegated to him. Plans may change and decisions have to be taken into the light of the change condition. Reward effective delegation. Effective delegation and successful assumption of authority must be rewarded. This will provide a proper environmental climate for fuller delegation and effective assumption of authority. Establish a climate of confidence. The subordinates to whom authority is delegated must generally feel free from fear and have a feeling of confidence that delegation will not result in punishment but is an opportunity of his own self-development and growth. Establish a strong belief in delegation. For delegation to be successful, the man who delegates must himself be convinced of need and benefits of delegation. He must also be willing to allow his subordinates to make mistakes, although he can be strict if the same mistake is repeated. Proper selection and training of personnel. Selection of personnel to various jobs should be fair and just. It should not be arbitrary, but it must be based on certain principles. Only right person should be placed on the right job. The person selected must also be given proper training to enable him to handle the post efficiently and to perform the assigned job properly. Proper selection and training helps to develop their self-confidence and morale. Proper control techniques be developed. In a good organization, proper control be developed and major deviation from standards should be checked. There should be no interference in day-to-day functioning of subordinates. Steps in the process of delegation. The following steps are essential and they must be kept in mind while delegating. The delegation should be define the result the delegation should be define the result expected from his subordinates. 2. Duties should be assigned according to the qualifications, experience, and aptitude of the subordinates. They may be described easier in terms of activities or set of activities to be performed by subordinates, or in terms of results that are expected from the performance of activities. Adequate authority must be given to subordinates. The authority to be delegated to each particular subordinate is determined in advance. The delegator confers upon the subordinates the right to act in a specified way within limited boundaries. It decides what action we may take and what action we cannot take. Proper authority to any subordinate not given in time will not give or produce expected result. The subordinate must produce expected results from the task assigned to him. It is obligatory on the part of the subordinates that he must give satisfactory performance from the task assigned. He becomes answerable for the proper performance of assigned duties and for the exercise of delegated authority. Authority without accountability is likely to be missed. Accountability without authority may be frustrating to the subordinates. The extent of accountability depends upon the extent of delegated authority and responsibility. A subordinate cannot be held responsible for acts not assigned to him by his superior. He is accountable only to his immediate superior. Proper evaluation of the performance must be made. In the end, information and control system must be established to check and evaluate the performance of subordinates to whom authority has been delegated. Duties, authority, and responsibility are the three interdependent essential steps in the process of delegation. In this connection, the eminent authority H.W. Newman has said, these three inevitable attributes of delegation are like a three-legged stool. Each depends on the other to support the whole, and no two can stand alone. What to delegate and when to delegate are two ticklish questions which a delegator has to answer to himself within the framework of organization. An executive, according to Lewis Allen, can follow the undermentioned rules while delegating. Establish goals that are be attained, define and enumerate the authority which the delegatee are exercised and the responsibility he is to shoulder, motivate the subordinates and provide him sufficient guidance, if necessary. Proper and adequate training should also be given to delegatee before authority is delegated to him. Asks for the completed work in between. If any help is needed by the delegatee, he should be provided with such help either directly through someone who knows the work and is writing of. Establish and educate control so as to supervise and provide necessary guidance. Merits of delegation. First, or disadvantages. It avoids wastage of time. Present day management is a complicated process. A manager has to perform various functions as a matter of routine work. it is not possible for him to give proper attention to all matters coming to him. Delegation helps him in transferring the less important subject to his juniors and attends to more important works. Number 2, it helps in training the new incumbents. The lower units that use the delegated power get a spontaneous feel of their future responsibility. They become aware of the works at the higher level to which they may be promoted. Or delegation also helps in developing the managerial personnel within the organization. 3. It avoids overwork. Delegation shifts some portion of the responsibility and work from the shoulders of the manager. To quote Beach, the overworked manager who learned the art of delegation is at one and the same time able to relieve himself of some of his burden, increase the competence of his men, and raise the level of accomplishment of his unit. It develops increased sense of responsibility. Delegation generates an increased sense of responsibility in the subordinate personnel. It also increases their working capacity and helps in enhancing their unspotted caliber, which could be helpful for management. Delegation also helps in avoiding any kind of act at a higher level, which may otherwise undermine the powers vested in the lower level units. It avoids delays. Delegations helps in taking timely and accurate decisions. The personnel at lower level being delegated act quickly, which serves the organization with due economy, efficiency, and rapidly. Difficulties in delegation. There is a fear aspect in delegation which plays a dominant role in a decision as to what to delegate and to whom to delegate. Executives know for certain that once authority is delegated, they will lose the grip over their subordinates and also control over the operations. It is natural that the executives may not like to lose either the grip or control over operations. But the important psychology is that by their nature executives have no confidence in their subordinates. They feel that the subordinates are not capable of shouldering the responsibility. Therefore, the question of delegation of authority does not arise. Sometimes executives suffer from inferiority psychosis. They know for certain that though they occupy a position of strength, but their knowledge and skill are not up to the mark. Their subordinates are well equipped and thus they may do the assigned job well. No executives would like to delegate when he feels that his subordinates may surpass him. From the above discussion, we may come to a conclusion that there are three types of fears which discourage delegation and thus create difficulties in delegation. fear of losing the grip and control over the operation, fear of not better performance by the subordinate to whom the authority may be delegated, fear of better performance by the subordinate to whom the authority may be delegated. The above difficulties arise out of lack of mutual confidence, non-existence of atmosphere of teamwork, non-independence in thinking and behavior, no proper and ambitious definition of common goals to be achieved, no inter-exchange of ideas and suggestions, no favorable management climate, existence of element of fear and frustration, incapable hands manning the executive position. Delegation is an important managerial technique. Every effort should be made to encourage delegation. This creates a sense of belonging among subordinates. It develops the personality of the subordinates and helps in evaluating the managerial performance. It also induces a sense of security among both the executives and their subordinates. A favorable management climate should be created by encouraging delegation.